Now we'll talk about the digestion of food in the small intestine, or how food get digested in the small intestine. And you know that small intestine has mainly three parts, that is duodenum, jejunum and the ileum part. And for your great surprise, digestion of the food particle takes place only in the duodenum part, not in the jejunum and the ileum part. So when the food from the stomach enters the duodenum part, it gets mixed with the pancreatic juice, that is juice produced by the pancreas, bile juice which is produced by the liver, and the intestinal juice which is produced by the intestine. First we'll see what are the content of this juice. Pancreatic juice consisting of inactive enzyme like trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidase, amylases, lipases, nucleases, etc. And all these enzymes are in the inactive form. So first it should get activated. At first, another enzyme known as enterokinase, which is produced by the small intestine, it activates a trypsinogen into trypsin. So trypsin is an active form of trypsinogen which is activated by the enzyme known as enterokinase, which is produced by the small intestine or the intestinal juice. Later, this trypsin activate all other enzymes. So that is about the content of pancreatic juice. If we talk about the bile juice which is secreted by the liver cells or the hepatocytes, this bile juice consisting of pigments like bilirubin, bilirubirin, and it also consisting of bile salts, cholesterol, phospholipids, etc. But there is no enzyme in the bile juice. Then what is the function of bile juice? Bile juice helps in the digestion of fats by the process known as emulsification. Emulsification means breakdown of fat into smaller particle known as micelles. Apart from that, this bile juice also activate the lipases which helps in the digestion of fat. So that is about the bile juice. Third one is intestinal juice, which is also known as succus entericus. The mucosa layer of the small intestine consisting of different types of cells known as goblet cells and the brush border cells. Goblet cells produces mucus, and the content of the brush border cells along with the goblet cells, that is mucus, is known as succus entericus or the intestinal juice. And this intestinal juice consisting of lots of enzymes like disaccharidases, as the name indicates, it helps in the digestion of disaccharide, that is carbohydrate. Dipeptidases, as the name indicates, it helps in the digestion of dipeptide, that is protein. Lipases helps in the digestion of lipids. Nucleosidases, that is helps in the digestion of nucleosides. So these are the content of pancreatic juice, bile juice and the succus entericus. So when the food from the stomach enters the small intestine, specifically duodenum part of the small intestine, it gets mixed with the pancreatic juice, bile juice and the intestinal juice or the succus entericus. So upon thorough mixing, different enzymes acts on the food particle. So if you talk about the digestion of carbohydrate in the small intestine, that is duodenum part of the small intestine, the starch that is present in the food acted upon by the pancreatic amylase. So that is a amylase which is present in the pancreatic juice. So acted upon by the pancreatic amylase, and it converts starch into disaccharides. Later, this disaccharides like maltose, lactose and sucrose is acted upon by the disaccaridases, that is an enzyme that is present in the intestinal juice of succus entericus, and converted to monosaccharides like maltose acted upon by maltase and converted to glucose and glucose, lactose acted upon by lactase and converted to glucose and galactose, sucrose acted upon by sucrase and converted to glucose and fructose. So that is how carbohydrate, that is complex carbohydrate, is converted into simpler soluble form. If we talk about the digestion of protein in the duodenum, that is small intestine part, the protein like proteases, peptones and the polypeptide, which is a byproduct of the previous protein digestion that takes place in the stomach, that is proteases, peptones and the polypeptide, which is a simpler form of the protein, acted upon by trypsin, chymotrypsin and carboxypeptidase. These are the enzymes that is present in the pancreatic juice. So it is acted upon by trypsin, chymotrypsin and carboxypeptidases, and it converts this into simpler form, that is dipeptides. Later, this dipeptides acted upon by the enzyme of succus entericus, that is dipeptidases, and it converted into amino acid. So dipeptide acted upon by dipeptidases and converted into simpler soluble form, that is amino acid. So that is about the digestion of protein in the duodenum or the small intestine. So if you talk about the digestion of fat in the small intestine, First, upon the entry of food into the duodenum part, it get mixed with the bile juice. As I already told, bile juice consisting of bile salts. So this bile salts helps in the emulsification of the fat. Emulsification of fat is nothing but the breakdown of fat into smaller particle known as micelles. So when the food enters the duodenum, the fats in the food is acted upon by the bile salts of the bile juice and the emulsification process begins. So where the fats are broken down into smaller particle known as micelles. Later, this emulsified fat is acted upon by the lipases, that is both pancreatic lipase and the lipase of the succus entericus or the intestinal lipase, and this convert emulsified fat into simpler soluble form, that is fatty acid and glycerol. So that is how fats are digested in the intestine. So in the duodenum or in the small intestine, all the complex food particles are digested into simpler soluble form. Later, the food from the duodenum enter jejunum and the ileum part, where the simpler soluble nutrients are absorbed directly into the bloodstream. So that is how digestion and the absorption of the food that takes place in the small intestine.